How are you now, everyone? It's a Monday, just as the market has shut here in Sydney time, but just a few bits and pieces. Nothing really amazingly new kicking off, apart from a very busy and noisy week that we've got ahead. Friday evening over in our time, but the US had the University of Michigan consumer sentiment survey, which showed that everything is sort of coming right off downhill. If you listen to the podcast, Heath Moss and myself laid down on Friday morning, we were talking about the way that in the US we're predicting that the consumer in the US will eventually just go dip, gone. And that's the way that we said that's probably going to be playing out for them, in that it can just go, one day they could just seize up and just shut off and just decide to stop spending, and that will most probably be what happens. So there's going to be one too many expensive things in front of them, one too many rises in front of them, one too many payments that they have to make back, and that's the way that the US economy is probably going to just hold up a little bit. So soft landing, hard landing. Look, I'm still somewhere in between those two things. I don't think it's going to be as soft as a lot of people have given it, but then I don't think it's going to be massively hard either. And remember that what happens after and after and after is going to be that sort of case where you see that there is some sort of a landing. You see the consumer spending comes back, and consumer spending is obviously quite important because it's about 65% of the US GDP, which the US GDP represents a certain amount of the world. So it's about 15% of the planet's GDP is the consumer in the US. So there's a lot to be listened to with regards to that. So if they stop spending, then a lot of stuff sort of starts to seize up. Now, what we're going to see and what we are seeing now, credit to Chris Weston, who's described this so much better than I would be able to this morning on his little thing that he does, is just talking about the US dollar smile. Now, we've talked about the US dollar, a lot of people have talked about the US dollar smile. I'm not here to really go over that or educate too deeply on that one, but it's basically just saying that the US dollar gets bought when things are good and US dollar gets bought when things are bad. So that's that situation. There's nowhere in between on those two things that are right now. So right now things are looking bad for the global economy. Recessionary fears sort of really start to come to the fore once again. And so the US dollar is going up. Now that's going to be bad for commodities. You can sort of see that's already started to take impact. And you've got a US dollar rising and the global economy sort of seeing that we've got recessionary fears. The fact is that China has probably done as much as it could possibly do for now going forward. The next thing for China is to cut interest rates potentially a few times, maybe going forward, maybe once, who cares? But also for them to then just take government policy and really ramp up what they're doing in that one. And that's probably going to be the next boost on commodities. There will be a point to buy copper when you want to buy copper. However, I'm not here to talk about that. I'm just talking about the fact that everyone was talking about these things, and that's what needs to be handled for the next part of the narrative going forward, as we see until the next thing comes up. Remember, it's been talked about, so it's been factored in. It's no longer a shock. The theory of thing in play all the time. The next part is that I'm going to go over again what I talked about last week, and that is India. We went long an Indian ETF just on portfolios here, but if you can get any other access to it, then you go ahead and you get access to it for clients that I'm advising in this regard, just through the VFS side of things. India, we bought the NDIA ETF listed here locally. It's the Nifty 50 in India, and we see that going up. We see a continuing flow of news going and sort of reinforcing that view that as China is seen as being slightly less investable, India has to take that flow of money. You've got a certain amount of emerging market allocation that you can have to sort of more developed end of the emerging market curve. India has to replace China with regards to that. That was reinforced for me with an amazing report that came out. And I've got a link here from East Spring Investments. Look it up if you can. I've got the link that I'm ready to drop into. It's in my note that's going to come out tomorrow, so have a bit of a look at that through Stockhead. But that's coming out from East Spring Investments, and it's a big chunky report, but it goes through all of Asia. It goes through everything that they've got, that they're talking about over in that side of the world. Now you can see, and just the stats that are coming out of Asia. So they ask 100 of their C-level executives that are on a survey that they do exactly what they see for Asia and what they see as being ahead. This shows, and what is it? Global business leaders are looking to Asia for opportunities with India in the lead. Markets which business leaders believe hold the most potential is 67% of them believe that it will be India. That's a fascinating thing, because it's 57% of them believe that China is actually going to hold that. So this sort of India keeps on coming up as being the place we want to be. More and more news sort of kicking off from this one. A great one from the Financial Times, talking about just a relatively small state. It's actually got 70 million people in a southern state of, I'm going to get the pronunciation right, I'm going to get it right one day. You ready? Karnataka. That's it. Fantastic. Thank you very much. Growing at 8% per annum for the last decade, was the 16th ranked state in India I want to say earnings, but ranked on business, on GDP development, on GDP contribution. Now ranked third just in the last 5 years since the last election, and the FT article has just gone straight into it. What was amazing, it's doubled the average income in the last 10 years, more or less, up to $3,800. That I continue to say that the big point, not only is India a place that's growing, and that's fantastic, everyone knows that. That's not a real thing. Sorry, it is a real thing, but it's not the thing that I'm going to talk about. What's the real thing is that they've got systematic investment plans in place, which is sort of like our super fund, but smaller. So you just have a small personalised account, takes a few rupee every month or a lot of rupee, however much you want to set, and puts it to work into the Indian market, which usually is just through the Indian managed funds which are listed in India. They can't really... The schemes don't really invest overseas. It all stays in India, and when it stays in India, it stays in Indian managed funds. If it buys Indian managed funds, then those Indian managed funds have to buy Indian stocks that underlie it. It's just as easy as that simple flow through. So it's similar in the way that our superannuation scheme that we have here keeps money, most of it locked in Australia, which then keeps that investment case going. This is in India, but much more controlled and much smaller, with huge growth ahead of it that is growing at a rate of knots, these investment schemes. So pay attention to that. It's not only the reason that, you know what I always say, which is that you can have the greatest thesis in the world, and it could be right, but if there's no actual money flow behind it, then it's completely worthless. This is one of those things. So look, again, I can bang the drum on India every single week if you want me to do that, but that's it. Look, that's all that I've got time for. There is one other thing that I wanted to talk about the weather, and I will say it really quickly, which is that Hudson Bay in far north Canada just recorded a 7 degrees Celsius beat of its previous May record high temperature. That's not, the thermometer was left in a hot place and we're measuring the temperature and all this global warming. That's a 7-degree difference. That doesn't come out of some scientific strange. It is getting hot, and it's getting hot over there, and I do still strongly believe that El Nino is very much in play, and that we're already in the midst of it right now, regardless of what happens over the next few months. It's basically a fact for me. Singapore just posted its highest temperature in 40 years. Vietnam just had 44.2 recorded, which is pretty significant for them as well. So look, that's it. Sorry it's not too interesting. Sorry it's the same stuff that I've talked about before, but India keeps on going. All I was just seeing on the market this week. Keep an eye on China with regards to interest rates and some of the news that's out of there as well. But if you've got any other questions, then please let me know. But yeah, lots to go with on that one, and have yourself a good week. Stay safe. Bye.